There's no checking, no holding, no fighting, no fornicating. Not for King Jesus, not for King Jesus, not for King Jesus, not for King Jesus. That's done for Jabulan, the god of the Freemasons, and the wicked stars. That's who that's for. They're married to La Cosa Nostra. They're in bed with the mafia 100 years. There's no checking. There's no holding. There's no fighting. No fornicating. Not for King Jesus. Not for King Jesus. Not for King Jesus. Not for King Jesus. There's no check-in. There's no holding. There's no fighting. No fornicating. Not for King Jesus. Not for King Jesus. Not for King Jesus. Not for King Jesus. That's done for Satan. He's a Freemason. He's a magician. The wizard boy. Praise the Lord, beloved ones. King Stephen I, King Stephen the Great, coming to you, Christ, anointed slave today, apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, and teacher. Teaching indoors tonight because of the threat of a thunderstorm outside here in Laurel, between Laurel and Bowie, Maryland, in the South Laurel, Maryland area. And I wanted to preach outside tonight along the road there, but I got a notice about a thunderstorm coming to the area and decided to preach indoors tonight. And that's good because, a lot of you guys are not in South Laurel and you wouldn't be able to necessarily see me. You might be able to hear me, but you might not necessarily be able to see me as I'm preaching the word. And what I want to do tonight is not so much preach a message from the Lord, but I want to talk about some social business dealing with the substance called Sevin Carbaryl. And, Sevin is a carbaryl. It's a chemical used to kill insects in the garden. It's what they call a pesticide or an insecticide. And so Sevin Carbaryl is used commonly in perhaps farming and gardening and things of that nature. My understanding is after you apply the stuff, you have to wait about 14 days before you eat anything that has been applied to. And my concern is not gardening tonight, although I would love for Black Americans to grow food in their own neighborhoods. There's a lot of land sometimes in inner cities that's not being used for anything. It'd be a good place to grow some food, and not so much for profit or to make money, but to feed the neighborhood and feed the community, good fresh vegetables and all that kind of stuff. And so I recommended when I was in Oak Park, Michigan, that Black America began growing food in those spaces that we have, that maybe right now we're doing is cutting grass, and maybe we can lighten up on all that grass cutting and do some farming in our own neighborhoods. In my hometown of Detroit, we have an alley system between streets. There's an alley, and those alleys have not been used much in the last 20, 30 years for anything. And so I said we can go out there in those alleys and plant vegetables and fruits and different things like that, grapevines, and go ahead and maybe not so much profit from the growth thereof, but eat the growth thereof. And we got a lot of people struggling with food security in our community. So I recommended that Black America across the country get involved in growing stuff, growing food. And that recommendation is still out there. I also recommended we Black Americans cut the grass. I know urban living can sometimes be depressing in the sense that maybe people are going through financial difficulties and various things like that, and you can get downhearted and let your grass keep growing and growing and growing. Maybe you don't even own a lawnmower, which is a real issue in some neighborhoods in America. You don't even own a lawnmower to be able to cut your grass with. And so I recommended for us black Americans to try to do a better job of cutting our own grass and making our own neighborhoods look as best as we can. And, I also recommended that we help our neighbors out that may, not be able to cut their own grass. I got a neighbor next door to me. Their grass is 6 feet high. My grass is manicured and beautiful. What I need to do is to make my neighborhood look better and even my own property look better. I might need to go next door and help my neighbor out, at least take care of that front yard, and which is facing the public, and get that front yard taken care of. And if I'm really loving my neighbor like myself, I'll help them get that backyard straightened out too. And it all makes us feel better when we have clean, neat, well-groomed communities. We'll feel better about life, feel better about each other, feel better about our community, feel better about our people group. And so I want to reissue that request today, King Stephen. I want to reissue that request that we do the best we can as the spring is here and the grass is growing. And once you start cutting it, it's going to grow back quickly, especially in the early spring. The grass grows back really quickly. We're going to stay on top of the grass and things of that nature and help our neighbors out, old folks, maybe some single moms, maybe people that are working 2 or 3 jobs. They don't have time to keep their grass cut. Maybe they don't even own a lawnmower. And I'm not going to lend you my lawnmower. I might just come over there and cut it for you. In the inner city of Detroit, some of the lawns are maybe 100 square feet. You might have a 100 square foot lawn, 150 square foot lawn, maybe something like that. It ain't going to take you long to go ahead and cut that grass for your neighbor. And don't even mention it to them. You're making the whole neighborhood look better. Everybody's going to feel better about our community. This is where we live, is what I told them in Detroit. We live right here, and this grass in this neighborhood is our responsibility. And we're going to all feel better if we stay on top of that grass and get it cut. We're going to feel better about ourselves and about our community. And people are passing through our community, of course, on their way to work and going to and fro, and they judge us by our grass cutting. And they judge us by the neatness and cleanness of our community. And so good PR is keeping the neighborhood nice and neat and clean. And I see you guys responding to that. I was walking from Detroit down to Toledo in July of 2023, and I noticed, the folks cutting their grass. I noticed everybody working hard to keep their grass up. I did see some exceptions to that rule, but there will be some exceptions. And if we have time and energy, we can help some of those exceptions out, especially the front yard. And if we got a lot of time on our hands, we can even help them with the backyard. And so just a reminder of something we talked about several years ago for the black community, keeping our own communities looking as best as we possibly can. What do we do when we don't have any lawnmowers in the neighborhood? We're going to have to figure out a way maybe to put some money together jointly and get some lawnmowers brought to the neighborhood maybe once a week, so we can cut that grass. And so there's ways to solve these problems. Where there's a will, there's a way. And it'll make our children feel better about their neighborhood. And maybe even the property values may be as high as they possibly can be in that community. All that kind of thing. On the farm, beloved ones, on those vacant lots, in the backyard, in the alleys. We want to farm. We want to grow food for ourselves. Make sure we use clean, safe, uncontaminated potting soil and to grow food in, and not necessarily the soil that our grass is growing on, because that soil might be contaminated. If you want to use the soil that your grass is growing in, you want to test that soil, take a sample to maybe the Department of Health, and tell them that you want to have your soil sampled to make sure that it is not contaminated with heavy metals, chrome and nickel, and things like that, things that will be harmful to you, because that stuff will absorb into your food. And so another way to do it besides using the soil your grass is going is put yourself together a box and put some potting soil in there, and then plant your food, vegetables, and whatever else you grow. Plant them in that box where you put some fresh, clean, purchased potting soil for that purpose. Keep that in mind. Very important to be careful with the soil that you're growing your food in. Make sure that soil is not contaminated. So, beloved ones, what I want to talk to you about tonight is something that is related to the soil, related to growing vegetables, and that's this substance called Sevin Carbaryl. Sevin Carbaryl, beloved ones, is a pesticide commonly used, and the spelling of it is different than the number 7. The spelling of it is S-E-V-I-N. S-E-V-I-N. And the Lord has revealed to me that Sevin is a nitric oxide inhibitor in the body. Nitric oxide is made inside of our body, inside of our cells, and Sevin Carbaryl will inhibit the synthase, or the enzyme that is involved in producing nitric oxide within the body. Nitric oxide regulates the dilation of the blood vessels. Well, you know how big the blood vessels get. You know, blood vessel could be like this, or it could be like this. When the blood vessel is like that, your blood pressure will be lower or normal. When the blood vessels like that, your blood pressure will be higher and can potentially cause, heart attack, stroke, things like that. And so this nitric oxide that is made in situ, or within the body, in the cells, and only exists for a short period of time inside the body. Once it's made, it gets consumed very rapidly. It can be inhibited by this pesticide called Sevin Carbaryl. And so you say, well, I don't use Sevin Carbaryl. I don't do any gardening, and I don't put any pesticides down. Well, that's great. What I'm suggesting to you is that someone is actually flying overhead of our communities, and the stuff is coming out the back of an airplane. That's what I'm suggesting to you today. I want you to do the best you can to confirm this, but I believe the Lord is showing me that we are being crop dusted, with Sevin Carbaryl, and again, after about 14 days, the Sevin Carbaryl has been decomposed and consumed by the environment. But when it's coming down from the sky, people are inhaling it, and we're walking in the midst of this pesticide. And pesticides and things like that are known to be able to be carcinogenic, and this particular pesticide, Sevin, which is a carbaryl molecule, is known to cause blood pressure, impact the blood pressure of people, even negatively, causing your blood pressure to rise because your blood vessels don't dilate. And it's also can affect blood sugar, and either cause blood sugar uptake or a digestion of blood sugar to be inhibited, maybe running up your blood sugar. So you got a couple things that are very common to people, diabetes and high blood pressure, potentially because of nitric oxide inhibition. And so Sevin Carbaryl is not responsible for all, perhaps is not responsible for all high blood pressure and diabetes. What I'm saying, when they're spraying it in your community, can cause health effects in that particular community related to diabetes and high blood pressure. And then you can also be impacted by Sevin Carbaryl in your immune system function. And so I'm going to give you the opportunity to study it out. I'm not going to try to explain it all to you today as far as the harm of Sevin Carbaryl. Well, you can just generally understand that we don't want to be inhaling and getting all over our body. We don't want to be getting a pesticide chemical all over us coming down from the sky above. And so when you look up in the sky, sometimes you see aircraft, and out the back of that aircraft is not coming smoke. That's not smoke, because the EPA won't let an airplane discharge smoke like that. You know, exhaust from the plane. What it is something else. It's something else besides smoke. It kind of looks like smoke up in the sky. And it is, I believe, a powder. I believe what they're bringing out the back of that aircraft is a powder. That powder, I believe, is Sevin Carbaryl in some instances. And I believe its purpose is to harm people in that community. It may be a population control eugenic device. I believe it is. And it may be explain why the White House is occupied by Republicans and Donald Trump today, as opposed to what's the woman's name? The woman that ran against Trump. I forget her name, but you know what I'm talking about. The young lady that, or not so young, the middle-aged lady that ran against Donald Trump and really almost won. She lost by 2.2 million votes. And it was the first time that the Republicans won the White House by a popular vote in over 20 years. And Vice President Kamala Harris, pardon my memory is blessed. It's an excellent memory. And Kamala Harris was running against Donald Trump, and I believe she would have won had there not been 15 million or so missing American voters from the voting rolls. If there are those many missing voters, it may be related to something. You know, part of the reason for that 15 million voter shortfall in the voting age population may be something like this crop dusting of American citizens with this substance, Sevin Carbaryl. I believe Sevin Carbaryl is a known carcinogen, and it also has an impact on your blood pressure and your blood sugar, and also on your immune system. And so we know we've been dealing with pandemic and all that kind of stuff. Well, if Sevin Carbaryl is impacting our immune system, then we're going to be more vulnerable even to the pandemics, or even the man-made pandemics, than we otherwise would be if we were not being exposed to Sevin Carbaryl. Now, beloved ones, when I was a boy, back in the 1970s, you know, I was born in the 60s, in early 60s, 1963, and I was a boy throughout the 60s, but sometime in the 70s, I was pushing 9 or 10 years old, and I looked up in the sky, and I saw an airplane flying over, and a white train of something, looked like smoke, coming out the back of the airplane. I think I might have been in California at the time, and I didn't think much of it. I just noticed that the aircraft was flying over our head, releasing some kind of substance. I thought it was perhaps smoke at the time, from the back of the plane. And so I was, in the 1970s, I would have been somewhere between 7 and 17 years old. And I'm thinking I was more like 11 or 12 years old when I saw that. And I didn't think much of it, beloved ones. I didn't meditate on it. I didn't have any thoughts of harm or danger coming from that aircraft and that smoke. But in the recent years, last 5 years or so, I have noticed that in the neighborhood I lived in Metro Detroit, that these planes were just covering the sky with this what looks like smoke. They were just covering the sky out there in Oak Park, Michigan. Sometimes the sky was covered by an orange substance. It wasn't a white substance, but an orange substance coming out of the back of these airplanes that are flying overhead. And so the people will tell you, well, we're just crop dust. We're just what they call it was a cloud seeding. They call it cloud seeding, and beloved ones, this cloud seeding is really not necessary in the middle of the winter. In the wintertime, we don't really want it to rain. If it rains in the wintertime, it's going to be snow. We don't really need a lot of, in Michigan, in the winter it's like 20 degrees, 10 degrees. We don't, Fahrenheit. We don't need cloud seeding in the middle of the winter. And so we get this what I call crop dusting. We get it year round, and it's having health effects. Metro Detroit really suffered during the pandemic. Probably not so much because of anything else, probably, and all that crop dusting. That crop dusting may have been carrying the day and causing a lot of fatalities in Southeast Michigan during the pandemic. The reality is, the crop dust has been going on for years, which I just intimated to you. Since I was a boy, say I was 11 years old, that would have been 50 years ago. 50 years ago, I noticed that airplanes were releasing some kind of powder at the back of their plane as they flew overhead. Now, I'm not going to take it personally and say they're doing that for me only. Although at times when I look up and I travel around the country, and I've traveled extensively in America in the last couple of years, I would say maybe as much as 3,000 miles of travel in the last couple of years, and only about 1,200 miles on foot. The rest in planes and trains and buses. But I notice that everywhere I go, I look up in the sky. And after a while, I'll see a plane riding overhead with a white cloud coming out the back of it. And so this chemical, I believe, is harmful. And I think the government or somebody owes us an explanation about what that stuff is. And that explanation better be pretty good. They better explain to us why it's necessary to be releasing this powder out the back of their aircraft over the top of civilian populations, over the top of residential areas. We need to get an answer from the U.S. government about, or the state governments about what is going on with the aircraft releasing some substance from the back of the plane or underneath the plane. And we need to make sure that stuff is not harming us. Make sure it's not harming our health and strength, not affecting our soundness of mind and body. Now the Lord said to me today, sleep. And it was the Sabbath day, and I was taking some rest today, beloved ones, but I believe the Lord was speaking about Black America being asleep. We have perhaps lost millions of our people in the last 10 years, and we are in the middle of losing more of our people as we speak. That killing field in America is ongoing. And because it's ongoing, we need to be more assertive in figuring out what is happening to our people, what is going on. I mentioned to you all years ago that we are being hit with vaccines, pharmaceuticals, biopharmaceuticals, food aid, and things of that nature. And the Lord also mentioned to me this past winter that the flu shot, which is also a vaccine, is also culpable because the Lord told me don't take a flu shot. The Lord told me don't take a flu shot this past winter. I'm not accustomed to taking flu shots. I have never, I'm 61 years old, but when you turn 50, they try to start getting you to take flu shots. I never fell for that one. And if I ever do get flu, apparently I recover from it. I have recovered from it to this day, and any flu that I have had trouble with. And so what I'm saying to you all tonight, beloved ones, is that we need to wake up and find out what this population control eugenics business is doing to our people group on a national level. They may not be expressing themselves, this population control business, they may not be expressing themselves as much everywhere, but some communities are being devastated. Some Black American communities are being devastated in our country because of population control eugenics in our day. This is why Kamala Harris is not president tonight. Not because she didn't have what it takes to win. She didn't have enough voters to win. If she had had more voters, living voters, she would have won by landslide. And, remember Joe Biden won the election of 2020 against Trump by about 6-7 million popular votes. So Kamala Harris really been a very similar candidate, and even a woman with that popularity of being a woman would have probably won by even a greater margin than Joe Biden did. Because she's just as liberal, and then she's a female that's going to bring some women from the conservative side who just simply want to have the very first female president in American history. And that's the only reason they're going to vote for her, because they want a female president. And so what I'm saying to you tonight, I want to talk to you about the Sevin Carbaryl. I don't want to talk to you about anything else tonight. I want you guys to do your homework on this chemical. It is a common garden chemical. You can go to any store in America and purchase it, any gardening store, any nursery store in America. You can purchase yourself some Sevin Carbaryl. I think it can be made into a liquid slurry, and you can spray it out of your water hose, or you can release it as a powder in your garden to kill insects that might harm your garden, vegetables, or even your flowers, or whatever it is. And so it's a commonly used chemical. I believe that's what's being released out the back of those aircraft. I believe I'm saying that to you because it is a revelation from God and not so much a investigative reporting type of thing. I believe the Holy Spirit has revealed to me that Sevin Carbaryl is harming us, and it harms the human body by inhibiting nitric oxide production within the body. Nitric oxide production in the body is within the cells, and it quickly is consumed in the body. When it's made, it's almost consumed as fast as it's made. And it affects things like vasodilation, the dilation of the blood vessels. It affects the blood sugar uptake, and it affects the immune system. I think it's also a carcinogen. And there have been many times, beloved ones, when I've been out walking and I look up in the sky and the aircraft is just going crazy. And dust is coming out, and you get this taste in your mouth. It tastes like maybe aspirin or something like that, something chalky. It tastes kind of like that. It's not a pleasant taste, but it's not a bad taste either. Not a bitter taste, but it's not a extremely pleasant taste, and certainly it's not something you want to be ingesting, because you don't know what the heck it is, and it's coming out of an aircraft. And listen, if it's of some social benefit, then they shouldn't be afraid to tell us what it is. And if it's doing some social harm, then we certainly ought to stop it from harming us. And so the other day, when I broadcast a few days ago, we talked about a few other topics, And I forgot to mention the issue. We talked about the measles, so-called measles epidemic, and being careful about giving your kids them vaccines, because I think these little children are targeted for destruction, especially minority kids who are going to be the majority of American society by the year 2040, 2050. The minorities will have become the majority. Minorities collectively will be the majority in America in like 2040, 2050. And so that means there's going to be some pushback against that. And America's government has for over 120 years, 125 years or so, been developing population control eugenic devices to maintain white supremacy. Well, we ought to resist being harmed by these devices if we can. We ought not to take this, be docile about this. Population control devices are harmful, and we ought not to be docile about that. We ought to try to find out what those chemicals are and try to do something about it if they are harmful to us. If they tell us that they're good for us, let us determine whether or not we want that good. In other words, if the government said, well, we're just spraying some vitamin A and vitamin B and vitamin C up in the air, and it's very helpful to you guys, well, we can say, well, we don't want that help. We can go to a drugstore and get some vitamin A, B, and C. We don't want that help, Governor and Mr. President. We would appreciate if you would stop overflying our communities and crop dusting us. And with that tonight, beloved, I'm going to conclude my discussion with you as I fill myself up with food here. And this is the Sabbath day, and or the Sabbath day has ended a couple hours ago. And I'm coming to you very late tonight on the East Coast over here. I'm going to not belabor the point. You guys can see the dust up in the sky. If you look up on any given day, you might see a line of white-looking smoke powder across the sky. You might see several lines. Sometimes when I look up in the sky, the lines make an X. They do like that. And I said, well, that's the Luciferians in America trying to crack a joke here, as if they have all power in heaven and in earth. And my Bible says the Lord Jesus Christ has all power in heaven and in earth. And so the joke is on the X people. The joke is not on those of us who are not X's. The joke is on the occult, that if you think that you've got all power in heaven and in earth, you are sadly mistaken. And the Lord Jesus Christ has all power in heaven and in earth. So let us find out what this crop dusting business is all about. My guess, we've been being crop dusted for as long as crop dusting has existed. My guess is that population control, eugenics, has been affecting Black America for over 100 years now. But the development of it probably began about 120 to 125 years ago, when America's elite community and scientific community got together and started working on means to maintain white dominance and white population control in the land using science and technology. And with that, beloved, I'm going to let you go today. This is King Stephen I. I want you to continue to pray for me. I will be praying for you.